Good morning, beautiful people. Grand risings to you all. This is Wake Up with Sonia Poulton, and guess it is exactly 9 a.m. GMT. We have switched from BST to GMT, and none of it makes any sense. You know, they like to mess around with our clocks, which also messes around with our circadian rhythms, which is another story for another time. In fact, it's not. It's for in a few minutes. How are you all? I can see they are so busy already on the live stream. I love it on the live chat. I noted that I think it was Craig last night who made a comment because we have lovely viewers who comment on the night before, and then for some reason it all gets wiped. Not by us, not by me, not by my lovely mods, my gorgeous, glorious mods. Can I just tell you that our soul sound has been traveling and not had much sleep? Thank you, Synchronized Soul. Good morning to you all, our lovely, lovely mods. And thank you all for joining us. And so Craig's comment was, so what, is it now a thing that everybody comments the night before? Kind of is, and I like it. And I love you all. Good morning. Very late here in Australia, says Maria. Maria, we've been turned upside down. It just completely throws us when they put clocks backwards and forwards. Well, it throws me. I don't know about anybody else. But first of all, good morning to you all, to Denise and to Voodoo Doll and Randy and Mervyn and HK and Sandy and Ian and Joanne and Julie and Marina. Good morning to you, Marina, and Kath and Craig and wee fat Shug. Our lovely Shug. We love him. And Julie. Throws me too, says Julie. Yep. Yes, we comment and like the night before, but it all gets deleted, says London Lady. Indeed. And good morning, Marcuson and Venmay and Jean and Crone and Robert. And that's life, but not as we know it. And Angie Mack. And to all of you, and on a plane. And the Reclaw and Drumstick. How are you, Drum? Drum has been brilliant, an absolute brilliant supporter right from the moment that I launched Rise, which was now, 4 years ago, Drum? You've been amazing. Thank you. And Jeanette, good morning to you too. And Louise and Cavan and Christine, so many of you. I love seeing you all. And Marsh Girl, give your caveman a prod for me. Love to bring him on. And good morning, Robert. Hello, Sonia and friends. Have a good day and fight the power, indeed. Right, what is coming up today? Right, well, we will be joined by the very lovely Godfrey Bloom, love Godfrey, who's going to be doing a very serious breakdown of what is taking place this week in the UK from the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And we, of course, will have a budget. And Godfrey is the man for the job, frankly. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. And hello, Kenneth, to you too. Yeah, good old Godders. We love him. October should be the 8th month, says Crazy Bunny. My mods know what they're talking about. I do not have idiots for mods. I have brilliant people who understand the world and the universe. Oh, yes, they do. And who else we got coming up? Lovely Lucy Brown. Lucy Brown has a fascinating history. Used to work with Tommy Robinson, was very, very close to him. And she has lots to say about lots of things. I had a good conversation, good chat with her last night. And we're going to drill down on all this kind of like what they talk about, the far right business and all that sort of stuff, and what it really means and what can really be done. Yes. Good morning, Lydia. Hope I am feeling so much better this week, my darling. So much better. Hepperwin loves Godfrey. So what else we got coming up? Whiteout skies. I'm sure if you're in the UK, you cannot have failed to have seen what was happening yesterday in our skies, and our viewers have not failed us. We even have a time-lapse video to show you from our brilliant viewers. Our viewers are not messing around. They are capturing those skies left, right, and center. And I'm able to show your videos, and I'm able to show your pictures, and I will do so. What else have we got? Net zero lies, LGBT poppies. Tommy Robinson is in court today and I believe tomorrow. Then there is the Tory leadership coming up and Sadiq Khan's cash cow, eternal cash cow. And you know what it is? It's you, the driver. I know you're shocked. And then there's Ed Miliband and the Podestas. The Podestas. When was the last time we heard about the Podestas? Gosh, it must have been to do with those leaked emails that WikiLeaks leaked. Remember? Then there are these mystery drownings that are taking place almost exclusively for men in New York, which is almost like a counterbalance to what is happening in the UK with women drowning. And I don't know if you've seen the latest hell from the Taliban. directed towards women. Well, we will be nailing that, and we'll be drilling down on that a little bit later. And Reform, or rather Richard Tice, tells their supporters exactly what he thinks of them, especially if they like Tommy Robinson. And we'll be looking at survivor art, a man who survived such extreme violence towards him when he was in a remand home as a young man, and but you know what? The great art can often come from such awful beginnings, and in fact, that is the reality. And I'm going to be showing some of Trent's art later. And of course, where would Halloween week be, Samhain week be, without us talking about the thinning of the veil, right? Because I'm that kind of girl. And that's what we're going to be doing. Plus all the usual good stuff, viewer emails, live chat. We do news differently around here because someone had to. Oh, yes, people, someone had to. And how are you today? Healing the Silence says the farming industry is declining extremely fast. And before you had land and passed it on, you wouldn't need to pay inheritance tax. But now the government are fully taking over. Yes, indeed, they are. Somerset Squirrel Craig says we are the lovable deplorables. We are. I kind of like that, the lovable deplorables. And what have we got going on here? Oh, I wish I lived near a beach, says Ben May. I still have ambitions to go and live near the sea for a period of time. I love being by the sea. I really do. You know, it's just, I love it. Who needs Halloween when we live in a Labour horror show? Craig wants to know. Morning, Stephen. Isn't it 7 years you can transfer it before death to avoid tax, says Ven May. I don't know. Let's ask Godders when he joins us. When I thought about the budget and I thought about somebody like really going in for the kill, I couldn't think of anybody better than Godfrey Bloom, frankly. Yes, absolutely. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, yeah, the clocks, right? So the clocks it does mess with me when they go backwards and forwards. They went back for 70 countries yesterday. Do you feel at all out of sync? I did. Yesterday, I felt really odd. It's not good for us. You know, it does mess with our circadian rhythm, which impacts our sleep, which impacts our hormones. We were originally told, of course, that it was to save energy and to acclimatize us to the dark nights of winter. But the reality is messing with clocks messes with our health. Yes, it does. Keeps people out of sync with their own bodies. And yesterday was so weird to wake up when it was dark, take my dog out for her evening walk when it was dark. And of course, it's instantly dark because it's gone back an hour. And everybody's, not everybody, but people are like, oh, we've got an extra hour in bed. Yeah, but you're paying for it, mate. And who says it's an extra hour? Because we lost that in summer. It's a very odd system. Very odd indeed. My love, they are changing the rules. Oh, no, wait, no, that's something else. Got that. Destas also alleged to be involved with the Madeleine McCann thing, lol, says Greg. Yes, that is only alleged, right? So the thing is, Greg, I did drill down on that because that was something that went around for a long period of time. And, the claims that Jerry was part of the Red Shoe Club and everything, and it isn't actually Jerry in that picture. But there was this whole idea that the Podestas were in Portugal at the same time as Madeleine. And there is not one spot of proof for that. And in fact, it goes back to a blog. It was written by Sonia blog. So it's just somebody else's, one person's opinion of something. And it started off a firestorm, frankly. I still think the truth to do with Madeleine McCann is a lot closer to home. Personally, that's what I think. I wonder if our first guest is with us yet. I don't want to go into it. Oh, he is. I can actually see him. Do you know what? Let's not even waste any time because we love him. We love him very, very much. And let's just bring him in and show him love. Here he is, the wonderful Godfrey Godders Bloom. How are you, Godders?
I'm very well, my dear. Thank you. I've got my Robin Day glasses on today, and I've got a tie on in honour of you.
You're looking very esteemed, I should say. People, we are talking about a man with a very rich history. Goddess these days is not just an author and a journalist, but of course, the author of this book, as I've told you already. But the thing about you, Godfrey, is your life is so well lived, for want of a better description. You have experience in military, in politics, in banking, all of the things that are utterly important and vitally important right now to have some knowledge of. Just before we start, any one of them stand out to you as your favourite career?
Oh, what a very that moved off the seam at me a little bit. I have to say, it's a very good question, which I can't answer for the simple reason every sort of period I then change and do something else because I get bored and I have to move on, and so consequently everything to me is fresh. So
Nice.
The City of London was absolutely magnificent because you feel you're at the heart of the world. And politics was interesting because I had absolutely no idea just how stupid mainstream politicians are. And it's only till you sit down across the table maybe and have a glass of wine or some dinner with them, you realize just how stupid they are. Military, I have to say, my undistinguished career in the military was great fun, probably for all the wrong reasons.
Well, you say undistinguished, but it wasn't at all. You're very self-deprecating. One of my favorite things that you did, because of course, when you were in politics, you were infamous and in all the right ways, as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things that you did, you were ejected from Mansion House, weren't you, for heckling Lord Turner? Do you remember that?
Oh yes, that was marvelous. There he was trying to pretend he'd just given all his staff a bonus in 2008. Having presided over the biggest cock-up in banking regulation in the history of this country, and that is difficult. And I know the rule is silence in the Mansion House. I simply couldn't sit there and let it go. I got chucked out.
But that's what we like about you, is that you pull no punches, and that is really appreciated because we are surrounded by politicians that nobody can trust, bankers that nobody can trust, military that nobody can trust, and yet people trust you. So on that note, let us talk about what is happening this week in the UK. And the first thing that hit me this morning, Godfrey, were the headlines. Keir Starmer demands Brits face up to harsh reality and pay more tax in speech today ahead of brutal 35 billion budget raid. They're preparing us, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And I have said for many years, what we need as a Chancellor of the Exchequer is a Yorkshire housewife who is used to budgeting, budgeting her balance and balancing her budget and so this. You will notice that in this election that's just gone by and the previous election, and the election before that, nobody ever talks about cutting spending. What they do is they talk about raising taxes through growth, this magic thing, growth. But of course, they don't facilitate growth because they've never worked in the private sector, in the wealth creating sector. We have a cabinet where nobody has even run a Welk store. So how can you get economic growth from people with absolutely no experience? So it's more tax and more tax. It's more tax on the same people. It's the wealth creating sector. What is the wealth creating sector? It's the little lady who's got a chair in a hairdresser's shop. It's somebody with a corner shop. It's all this economy that we have is all about small businesses. And of course, this government are only interested in corporations. And we see that in everything they do. If I were Chancellor and I put my Yorkshire housewife hat on, this is where I just made a little note of what they get rid of money on. Ed Miliband's Green Initiative has cost 8 billion since he came in. And who's it for? For the mates who build wind turbines who give money to the Labour Party. Are you watching this? Are you going to sue me for slander? Hey? No, you're not, are you? Because I can prove it all. We send 3 billion via the Ukraine to the United States arms manufacturers. 3 billion. Here's another one. 1 billion, just under £1 billion a month in foreign aid, which is unaudited. It's not audited. We don't know where it goes. We know Miliband's brother gets a good share of it, don't we? We've got climate change here. We're sending money to stop the sun shining in Africa. That's 10 billion. Stop the sun. You couldn't invent this. The World Green Fund, you would have spotted, perhaps, that had 31 billion pounds gone missing from the World Bank Green Fund. I mean, how much did we put into that? And we don't even know where it's gone. He's given the public sector 5% increase. Now, what people don't take into consideration, not only has that cost billions by giving them 5%, every man jack of them, and at latest count, that's 6 million, are going to have an index-linked pension. So our children and our grandchildren are going to be lemoned with these huge pension bills, which enable public sector workers to retire at 55 and actually, after 10 years in retirement, earn more than they got when they were actually working. We've got aircraft carriers floating around the Mediterranean. Of course, it's the Western Mediterranean, because everybody knows, and I speak as a military man, that they could be sunk in 20 minutes by anybody who wants to. They're totally obsolete and unbelievably expensive. And now she tells us we're in such a tight spot, she's going to borrow another 50 billion, which of course needs to be raised. Now you either print it or you pay interest on it. This is the economics of the madhouse. Now, before everybody gets their knickers in a twist about this, the last lot were no better. Hunt was no better. We live in a kleptocracy, and they take the money from the same people all the time. Pensioners, small businesses, ordinary workers on the minimum wage, or perhaps not just even the minimum wage, the ordinary average wage. They just screw us over time and time again. We're the highest tax now. We are higher taxed than we have ever been in our history, certainly in my lifetime. It's got to end somewhere.
And I don't think people are getting their knickers in a twist. People are delighted to see you on here, as I say, pulling no punches. Absolutely, Stephen. He is a great guest. We appreciate him very much, very much. And so Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is telling us this is a budget for strivers, right? That's what she says. But this really appears to me to be, as you're saying, this is an attack on the ordinary average working man and woman again, isn't it? That's really the reality.
Yes, and we don't know yet, but we strongly suspect that employers' national insurance stamps are going to be put up. Now, I hate this word national insurance. It's a nice, warm, cuddly word. It's a tax, people. It's a tax, all right? And here's in, if you extend it, it's a tax on jobs. Can you imagine anything more stupid if you want to grow an economy than taxing jobs? So anybody in the private sector who's going to say, I was going to give people a 4 or 5% interest rate, to cover inflation this year, I can't do it. It's going to be 2% at best, because they've taken that money off me. And I think the average figure lately has been £800 per year per worker.
Wow.
So small businesses just can't afford it. Yeah. It's utterly madness, and we're still going ahead with railways to nowhere, which cost billions and billions.
Absolutely. What did you think when they first went into number 10 and Rachel Reeves and all of them start talking about this 22 billion black hole? What was your response to that?
Well, I was on an Any Questions program once when Rachel Reeves was elected. Shortly after she was elected, I was on the panel. Or some sort of program of that nature. I'm going back when she was just elected. And the moderator, who was BBC, whose name escapes me for the moment, and of course, needless to say, the BBC hate my guts. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Good.
But
badge of honor.
Even he came up to me and he said, bloody hell, he said, Rachel's got a lot to learn, isn't she? She's not the sharpest pencil in the box. And I would argue this again, frankly, I think she's in some sort of weird way slightly retarded. I mean, she must know. Now, let's just take everybody watching your program this morning has been through a patch where they have to, balance their budget. I have. We all have. I left the city when I was on big salaries to start my own business, my own small business, and that was a heavy cross to bear. So my salary was monstrously slashed. And so I had to really cut my cloth. Now, if you are in that situation and you have 2 cars, you get rid of a car. Your family makes do with 1 car. You forget your really expensive holidays. And if you're a businessman and trying to struggle for a business, you forget flying first class or business class. You forget the 4-star hotels. And what you do is you cut your cloth until your business gets off the ground. We all have to cut our cloth from time to time. And at the moment, that's most of us if you're not in the public sector. Now, this is the problem that we don't have. We don't have business experience in politics, and we don't have housewives. I've got a big brief for housewives because housewives know how to stretch a budget. Rachel Reeves hasn't a clue.
That is the reality. I mean, that is actually the reality. I can juggle like nobody's business when I have to, because we learn to, don't we? And I doubt that she's ever learned to. And you're right, she doesn't have a clue. But the thing is, one of the things that they're going to be attacked on is it would appear, and I know this is no surprise to anybody, but they're breaking their election promises, aren't they? The whole idea was they weren't going to increase taxes on working people, including national insurance and income tax. And now they're talking about extending the income tax freeze, and that means that we'll pay more on our earnings, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, what we used to have, of course, was the base camp, which years ago was sort of 12 grand, with base, so it went up with inflation in order that people weren't sucked into a high rate tax. It was never the original intention to put ordinary folk on round about the national average wage into high rate tax. I don't believe in high rate tax anyway, but even that's the case. Now it's sucking in more and more people will be paying part of their income in high rate tax. How do they imagine that increasing employers' national insurance isn't going to impact on the employee? How could it not? How could it not?
Right.
Exactly. And of course, VAT, I was a great Brexiteer, as you know. VAT was an invention of the European Union. We should get rid of 20%. Everything we buy, from frying pans to saucepans or whatever it is, it's got 20%. You buy a new car because the old one's really knackered after 4 or 5, 6 years, and you want to replace the car. An average family car now through inflation is £30,000. You're paying £6,000 in VAT. Never mind on the petrol and your tax to use the road, which doesn't go on roads, does it? We know it doesn't go on roads by looking at the potholes. We live in a kleptocracy.
Right.
We live in a kleptocracy. And I don't know whether any of your viewers spotted my interview with Professor Dutton, Ed Dutton, which
we'll
was
put a link in the description. Is it on your channel?
Yes, it is. It's fascinating because he's a sort of psychologist. You know, he's a highly qualified man, but he's not a trick cyclist, you know, with a certificate. He does other things. So I won't go into the details. I don't know that I fully understand it, but he's a big lecturer and he's a professor and all that kind of thing. And he says the problem with all these people, and we were actually having a crack at Starmer in particular, who had his mother unfortunately had rheumatoid arthritis, and he was a very young boy when he had to look after his mother. So you had this role reversal. Well, this means, of course, he hasn't been brought up in a normal family circumstance, so he's not empathetic to ordinary people. These people are flawed. Politicians, generally speaking, are sociopaths. For the simple reason, in what other profession is your colleague your enemy? Your colleague, backstabbing is what it's all about. And I know I've been through all this. I was in politics for 10 years. If you want to get up the greasy pole, the way to do it is you stab your mate in the back.
Yes,
that's how you do it. That means you've got to be a sociopath to be successful. Blair, Boris, don't fall for all that fluffy, jolly chap thing. The man's a sociopath.
People want you back in politics, Godders. Our chat wants you back in politics. Any chance of that?
No, I'm 75 next week.
Who cares? You don't look 75, does he? Nobody does not look 75. You don't sound 75. Yes, Mel, he's absolutely on fire this morning. So here's the thing, right, is that even though we're talking about Rachel Reeves being the Chancellor and everything, you and I know that we are all part of a sort of global construct. It was interesting to me that she headed off to the States last week, went to talk to the IMF. What do you think? How much influence do you really think she has on this budget as opposed to people beyond her?
Well, of course, you've put your finger on it, Sonia, there. Of course, she has the Treasury have to actually crunch the numbers and do the business. She's too thick, to be brutally frank. She's just too thick. So she's got all these people behind her. Now, here's the problem. We still live in the world of Sir Humphrey Bumfrey, you know, from the wonderful program. The trouble is, all our institutions, particularly our civil service, have been infiltrated by corporatists, by people who have a loyalty elsewhere. It's either in medicine, it's to the WHO. In politics, it's to the WEF, or it's the UN. And so it goes on and so it goes on. These people don't even pretend. don't even pretend to be interested in us. They don't care about us. They care about the international situation, their international bosses, Klaus Schwab, and I'm sorry to say the King, King Charles III, who I wouldn't pay in shirt buttons. What has he got to do with his subjects? At least he should have something in common with his subjects. I mean, a king should think, well, my subjects are my first priority. He doesn't even pretend to think like that.
No, not my
and he's
king.
he's worried about climate change all the time. He's just bought a private jet.
I know. You and I talked about him before because you are formally a supporter of royalty, right? But you said when it came to him, you simply could not support him. Just for the benefit of our viewers, really, why is that? Is it because he's all part of that agenda, or is there something else?
He's part of the agenda. I think he's another man who had a difficult background, a difficult upbringing. The Duke was a tough guy. He was a sailor. He was quite a distinguished Royal Naval officer. He had a son that just, isn't that kind of material. He sent him to Gordonston, which is a roughy, toughy school in the north of Scotland, totally unsuited to a sort of a delicate plant like King Charles III. And so consequently, the guy's completely at sea. And he's fluffy, huggy, but he's a fraud. He's a fraud. He has Aston Martins, he has Bentleys, he has a private jet. We can't even count how many houses he's got and castles. We can't. He's the richest man in the world. Tell me, is he going to eat bugs? Is he going to have nothing and be happy? Or are we all having too many children? Oh, but not the royal family.
No, absolutely not.
They breed like rabbits. Now, it's got to be, if it's sauce for the goose, it's got to be sauce for the gander, hasn't it? So he's not setting an example. And we've had previous monarchs, I would say, King George in the war, for example, and the Queen Mum set a wonderful example to us and led us through very, very difficult times. But these comedians, these Windsors, who are parvenus, if you look at royal families across the world, they're complete parvenus. I mean, Saxe-Coburgs, really. They've only just turned up from Germany. Mickey Mouse. So consequently, I'd bring back the Plantagenets.
You are on form this morning. Did the missus put something in your coffee, goddess? But I mean, the reality is we do need more people who are prepared to speak out like you, because I think we're in a fairly dreadful situation, all things considered. Keir Starmer came in with less than 20% of the votes, and we've seen what he's like ruling with this. He's got a very punishing head on him, hasn't he? It's obvious he was a former DPP, because everything is about punishment. I'm taking you slightly off tangent here, because I just would like your feedback on it. In terms of his period in office since July, what do you think about the attack on people who are kind of raising up and wanting to talk about immigration?
I think if you are prepared to release men who savagely beat their wives from prison, to replace them with grandparents who are actually quite ill for turning up and shouting hurty words at the police for 2 years or 2.5 years or whatever it happens to be, is disgraceful. It's scandalous. It's scandalous. And I think sooner or later, the great sleeping electorate in this country should actually hand out the same punishments to these people as they handed out to King Charles I. Would be a good start. Bit of a chopping block. But in the modern world, if you don't want to incite violence, and I don't want to incite violence, let's exile him like we did the Duke of Windsor, who was another pain in the arse. Let's send him to some sunny island where he can strut and pose and sponge off his friends. Let's get rid of all these people. And I think we need to start doing it before it's too late. We are getting to the stage where it could be too late.
Yeah, I think we're in dire straits right now, and I'm really deeply concerned about this week, because there is no care. As you say, these people are completely out of touch. They don't know what it's like to really truly balance a budget, to sit down at the kitchen table and work out which bill you're going to be paying first this month. They have no idea about any of those things. And so I am deeply concerned about this attack on people, on all working people. And of course, we've seen various attacks. They're also talking about this whole idea, right, about putting a huge huge volume of money in the NHS, but we've already seen where they want to put it, right? They want to put it in smartwatches. They want to put it into a digital future in the NHS. Now, God, as you and I have talked about the NHS before, what do you think should be done with it?
I think it needs dismantling and we have to start again. That's what I believe. My wife worked for some years as a physiotherapist in the NHS, gave up on it. And we got lots of friends who are doctors and GPs. They're friends of mine, so they will say the same thing. They think it can be reformed. It can't be reformed. We have to start again. How can we have a health service with 1.2 million people employed by it, less than half of whom have any medical qualification of any sort? How come it be now we've got to 170 billion pounds to pay for the NHS? You could give every family in the land something like 10,000 pounds a year to put in their pocket to pay for their health if and as and when they need it. The whole thing's scandalous, but then what organisation run by the government isn't a shambles? Any government.
It is deeply concerning right now. I feel so frustrated as a taxpayer. I feel that I'm literally just handing over my money to crooks. And I've pretty much always felt like that all my working life, in all fairness. But now it's so transparently obvious that our money is being spent in ways that is completely contrary to the British people. The amount of money actually going overseas is quite shocking, isn't it? And as a military man, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think we ought to perhaps look at it. I've always been against a written constitution because I think we want to have a perfectly good constitution. But I would make it fundamental that we are not allowed to send any money abroad under any circumstances until we've got our own house in order. And if we didn't send all this money abroad, working women could retire at 65. We would have better care and better everything would be better if we had it there. But it's not just a question of money. It has to be organisation. The NHS isn't failing because it doesn't have enough money. It has plenty of money. It has people who have taken it over. Just to leave the listeners perhaps with this, the average salary for an administrator is £69,000. The average salary for a theatre nurse is £33,000. What kind of lunacy is that?
Yes, I saw a job advert yesterday. I will bring it up later, but I think it was for a new equity and diversity officer. And I think they were in the NHS. I think it was 143,000. I will double check that later. But we've no use for anything like that. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. And also, oh, here we go. Let me put up so many comments today. Brilliant. Thank you so much. But also, I just want to remind people of something that you did. And that was when you were an MEP. What did you do about expenses?
When I was an MEP, I didn't take an MEP's salary on a matter of principle. My attendance allowances I gave fully audited to Yorkshire Charities. And I didn't take the pension, the non-contributory index, because that's impossible for anybody else to get, any of my constituents to get. So I didn't take any of that. I did take from the Ministry of Justice a smaller sum in order just so that I could actually pay my bills at home. But that was a matter of principle. What a waste of time that was, because nobody gave a shit. Nobody bothered. They wouldn't publish it or anything like that. And I wasn't alone, incidentally. There were others who took the same moral high ground, but I didn't take any of it. So people say, oh, you're all right, Godfrey, you were in there 10 years. No, I didn't milk it. I didn't cheat.
No, you didn't.
I played with a straight bat. But we live in a world now, playing with a straight bat doesn't get you anywhere, really, does it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to live with ourselves. We have to be able to sleep. We have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror. So I think on a personal level, it most certainly does, because integrity is so vital in a world that seems to be integrity-less. And I do consider you as somebody with integrity. I remember, I mean, I've said this to you before, and that is mainstream media taught me to dislike you. Told me that you were the enemy of people like me. And then when I started to get to know you, I was like, he's all right. He's not the way they've portrayed him. And actually, he's somebody with a really good sense of humor, and you use it to maximum impact. So, Godfrey, round it up for me. What this week, if it is the worst of what you've been saying that we experience, how can we protect ourselves? What can we as working people do?
It's very difficult for ordinary people who don't have much assets to move. I'm a gold bug, as you know, and so I've been very keen on gold. So it protects against currency depredation. So stack up the larder with, tin grub and all the rest of it, because grub is only going to get more expensive. They're having a big assault on our farmers. They're having a big assault on we've got to register our chickens now. Why do they want that? So they can turn up and pull their necks. My farming friends around me tell me they're being paid to grow wildflowers instead of actually food. And so it goes on. But my advice to anybody watching this now, okay, it's Monday and the weekend's a fair way away. I should spend this coming weekend getting completely and totally pissed.
That was so unexpected. Oh, it's so wonderful to have you with us, everybody. This is the remarkable Godfrey Bloom, and he is on fire this morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Godfrey.
Great pleasure as always.
Lovely. Wonderful. Isn't he on fire? Yes, he is. Brilliant. Take care. Thank you. Wonderful. Yes. Oh, I love it when people are just prepared, just to speak, be so forthright. Yes. Yes, Reba loves Godfrey. Mama Bear loves him as well. Excellent, Godfrey, says Shug. What's this, Jean? They are talking about billions of pounds, willy-nilly. Oh, let me just get back to that. Ordinary working people are crazily taxed for everything in the UK. King Charles III. I kind of love that. I think I do the same this weekend, says Stephen Hall, rather. Bring him back soon. Lydia, he's just left. Lydia wants him back already. Wise words. What a chat, said Good Ship Lollipop. Indeed. Gotta love him. Gotta love him. But yeah, mainstream media taught me to dislike Godfrey Bloom. They said that he was a misogynist, that he was a racist. And as I've got to know him, I've realized none of those things are true. Like literally none of those things are true. Things that he said in humor were taken seriously. And Godfrey Bloom, what a wonderful name, says Patricia. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Sonia, I would love to attend a comedy. Oh, wait, what's this, Merv? What's this? I would love to attend a comedy club with you and see who would be the first falling off the chair laughing. I do like a laugh, Merv. I do like a laugh. I must bring Intel Lady back soon. She's absolutely excelling on her Angela Rayner no-brainer stuff. It's all the usual slur labels they apply. Bring back the sausages, says Craig. Christine says, Trump 2024. Hopefully we'll be getting some reports from the States on Friday, kids. Yeah, Jan. Anti-Goddard's propaganda is nasty. It was very nasty. MSM taught everyone to hate Trump, says Stephen. Yeah, Godfrey reminds me a little of Dr. Vernon Coleman. Is it? Oh, really, Joanne? Interesting. Interesting. Randy says people hate truth because they do not know it. I take your point completely. So he's got us off and running, hasn't he? Brilliant man. Brilliant man. I see, by the way, a British soap star was arrested and bailed on suspicion of child offences. Anybody seen that? Cops swooped on his home over the alleged abuse of 5 teen boys. The actor cannot be named, had a major role in top TV shows. He denies the claim, has been bailed. Police seized computers, documents, and they're seeking evidence relating to the alleged abuse of the 5 victims by the man. And he was held for several hours before being released on bail. His family, including his partner, were left stunned by his arrest. And he's also understood to be shocked by the so-called historic allegations, which he denies. The claims date back to the 1990s, when the suspect was appearing alongside some of Britain's most famous names in a string of top TV shows. Who could this be? And he's been conditionally bailed while inquiries continue. The fact is, TV is full of predators. It has been for a very, very long time. And it goes back to all the things that we talk about around here about the hunger for so many people to get into showbiz that they are made vulnerable, especially children. Some parents are horrendous. My daughter went to Sylvia Young Theatre School, a very renowned school, but also lots of rumours swirling around it that I later discovered. But loads of people went there, including Rita Ora, who we were talking about on Friday, as one example. And And the thing is that I wasn't your average stage mother at all. I kind of like, I was completely led by my daughter. It was what she wanted to do. So we moved back to the Cotswolds at this point, even though she was born in London. I took her back to the Cotswolds for a period of time for her to grow up and go to primary school there, because it was just so much better than London education. And so, but we'd come back to London every Saturday from between the age of 10 and 16 when she went to Sylvia Young. And some of those stage parents, they're scary. They would sell their firstborn for their child to get a shot at stardom. They're scary. They're so pushy. And it's horrible. Here we go again. I wonder, says Katie. Such evil. Cotswolds are beautiful, says Pink Dime. Cotswolds are gorgeous. Born and bred there. Sirens Esther. Much of my family is still there. In Gloucestershire and Wiltshire is primarily where my family are. I see what you did there, healing the silence. Joanne, he's around. Somebody sent me one of Vernon's articles the other day. Yes. What else we got? Yes. Many videos. Oh, right. Okay. I won't say that because I don't want to be done for defamation, do I? Anyway, yes. No idea who it is, but no doubt we will find out soon. Find out soon. It's going to get interesting, folks. Again, but we have to do something about it, obviously. Right. So there was no big Kamala Harris news, right, on Friday. And I'm so sick of this on Twitter, on X, these accounts that do this on a constant basis. They're like, oh, big news incoming tomorrow about Kamala Harris. No, there wasn't. You're a liar. And also, like, you know, I saw this the other day. This is also one that I can't stand. A major psyop is coming. They're all psyops. That was Jennifer Arcuri, she who was involved with Boris Johnson for a period of time. And but stop tweeting like that. It makes you look stupid. It really does. I'm so sick of it. Right? It is a distraction. Distraction. Shug said it'll be reported somewhere in a US paper. Yes, the US always get to know news that we can't. Craig said next 2 weeks in the world are huge. Yes, they are. But the thing is that they were all saying, and it obviously X is absolutely like a Donald Trump campaign, right? Obviously, because Elon Musk is involved with Donald Trump. But come on, you can't just be putting out blatant nonsense. Oh, Devon, you did go to Sylvia's in Marylebone in the 80s, did you? Ooh. Yeah, they are. Exactly, Marcuson. That is exactly what they are. Exactly. I hate it. Richard Hall has been in court, says George. Yes, he has. Not only has he been in court, we read the details of his judgment on Friday. So he's back in court, isn't he, in November? And that's to do consequentials because he's obviously lost the case, and also for them to find out whether he's also lost the case to do with GDPR as well. Stella wants to know, will they launch their global cyber attacks as soon as Trump wins? Was on a hot mic saying men don't like her. What was that? No baloney Mahoney. Well, lots of people don't like her, mostly because she's you can't trust what she's saying. Like, I mean, and I mean, some of the things that Donald Trump says is actually quite funny about her, to be fair. But yeah, so please stop doing that. It annoys me. It doesn't just annoy me. I do think it is actually a distraction. And the thing is, obviously, because Elon Musk has monetized X, people just post absolute nonsense on there. Nonsense. It is not a #1 news app. It's a #1 gossip app. That's what it is. That's what it is. And thank you, Claire, for sending me the National Risk Register, which I was looking at. I'm going to go look into that in more detail for Friday's show. And you're absolutely right. Claire very kindly pointed out that there have been so many simulations only to happen later, or are they a psyop like the London terror attack? And the National Risk Register is the whole idea of preparing us for the worst. But as Claire has so accurately pointed out, the information on there is really just a warning. It's a warning of what's coming up. And as proved that Kamala Harris' photo of her grandmother is false to make her look like her ancestors were more black. Yeah, didn't what's her name? Candace Owens. She's done a real deep dive into Kamala Harris, hasn't she? And didn't I see somewhere at the weekend that Candace Owens has now been banned temporarily from Australia for anti-Semitism. Did anybody else see that? Stephen's preparing for the next alien invasion. Absolutely. And by the way, kids, have you seen this? Let me just bring this up. Oh, let me bring it up here, actually. There we go. This LGBT poppy. Have you seen it? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think we have a need for that at all, because it doesn't, when it comes to poppies, right, it is about honouring the war dead and about raising money for those who have been at war, although obviously not all the homeless ex-soldiers. And I don't think it needs to have anything at all to do with sexuality. I don't. I really don't. Kat's seen it. And I think it's ridiculous. And what they're telling us is this badge symbolizes support for our LGBTIQ plus community, who are a vital part of our armed forces, past and present. But nobody cares. Are they any good on a battlefield? Right? Yes, Craig, the poppy was politicized years ago. And it absolutely, I took this video last night, by the way. I live in Teddington, which is kind of the home of like the British Legion, right? And they make a really big deal about Armistice Day in Teddington. And so this was on our high street yesterday. Let me just show you, give you an idea. Oh, I wonder if I can make that just bigger so you can actually see it. Oh, let me do that again. So you can see, like, we have massive big poppies down our street. And when, see, look, absolutely all the way down, like it is a proper celebration. And just over there is the war memorial, just where the police cars are coming down. So the thing is that me personally, I don't get involved with any of that, because I feel that there's a lot of glorification of the war dead, and I'm really uncomfortable about it. Pink Diamond says, I'm sure the LGBT soldiers are just as valuable on the field as any other soldier, but why are they being singled out? Absolutely. Greg said, wearing a poppy is 100% virtue signaling. Right, Greg, let me tell you my story, right? So basically, when you're in TV, as I was a lot, and when it comes around to November every year, you have to wear poppies. And I refused. And on all of the shows that I was on, that was This Morning, the Alan Titchmarsh show, Good Morning Britain, I kept refusing. And I said, I'm not doing that. And it's not because I don't honour people who sacrifice their lives, but this is very political, and I'm really concerned about where the money's going to, and it doesn't always go to the right people. And there's so many homeless ex-soldiers with PTSD that have just been thrown to the wolves, and nobody's taking care of them. Shug chooses to show respect in other ways. Same. Literally what I'm saying here now is a form of respect, but I don't like to see warmongers gathered around the cenotaph. I hate that. Like, literally all the people who are responsible for present day war gather around the cenotaph, whether that's Tony Blair or Boris Johnson or Theresa May or any of those people, prime ministers or Home Office. They gather around the cenotaph, and obviously this year it will be Keir Starmer. And look, Keir Starmer wanted to bang up so many veterans, didn't he? Remember, like far right, bang them up for their social media posts. But when it comes to Armistice Day, they'll be all over them. Stephen's brother loves all that stuff. Politicians are warmongers, says Cameron. Yes, same old. Want more? Yes, Rachel, same old. Gay service people were always included, but the LGBTQ want more of everything. Yes, they do. They want to. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It seems that we are surrounded by people who want to monopolize us, whether that is in terms of religion, in terms of culture, in terms of sexuality. And it's like, can we all just be? Because I think that we're decently okay as people, and we can self-monitor, we can self-regulate, we can regulate each other. We don't need to keep being told what we should think and what we should feel. And I don't like it. Keir Starmer is full of it, says Patricia. She actually says he's full of something. Francis Leader, please, Francis Leader is a legend and she's in our chat. Frances, please come on the show. I've been looking for a contact number for you. The amount of people who have asked me to bring you on and talk about Black nobility as one example. Frances Leader is a heroine. She's in the chat. Let me tell you about her. This is a lady who has been out there on the front line. Okay. And I joined her one New Year's Eve in Manchester when they were activists against fracking. And Frances is absolutely brilliant. Love you, Frances. Please come on and talk to us. We would love you to. Yes, she's a brilliant woman. Brilliant. And honestly, she is literally your original no F's given activist. Love it. Frances Leader was born to lead, says Stella. Yes, she was. Brilliant lady. So thrilled to have you here, Frances. Truly. Please get in touch with me. What's my view on charities? Asked Kennedy. I don't trust them for the most part. Because most charities' money goes into administration and doesn't actually go to the thing that they're raising charities for. And what you often see is little charities I used to support, and even those I struggle with now. I believe that you should put money into your community. Okay, so maybe small charities in your community. But the big corporate charities, no, absolutely not. Whether that is Cancer Research UK or any of those, don't trust them at all. As I say, the money goes into administration. I think every CEO at Cancer Research UK has never been, well, not never, but certainly in recent years, because I made the film Business of Cancer, in recent years has not been paid less than £250,000. Absolutely obscene. Randy says, give help to the ones you know and need help. Yeah. This is so true. Wait, Debbie Evans, ask me about charities, Sonia. I can reveal quite a lot. Is this Debbie Evans as in UK column? Another ledge. What? We're surrounded by legends this morning. This is amazing. Yes, we'd love to hear what you think about charities, Debbie. Absolutely. On a plane, I actually say this often. They're not called crook for nout. No, they're not. And remember the BBC charities, one of them, what's the BBC charity for children that they do in November? Remind me. But they kept back a lot of that money. They've invested in arms and tobacco, and it was for children. Patricia, I don't know, is the short answer. Patricia wants to know why there are not more outspoken supporters of the common man addressing the people who, it's just jumped up again there, addressing the people who need to hear it. You're very welcome, Patricia. Maybe because I'm a commoner. I come from common stock, and proudly so. Yes, I do. Yeah, proudly so. Absolutely. And have no problem with that whatsoever. Right, I'm going to be welcoming my next guest very soon. Very interesting woman. Absolutely. So the march this weekend, which we're going to be talking about next, the Unite the Kingdom. Obviously, Tommy Robinson wasn't able to be there. Tommy Robinson had to hand himself into Folkestone Police Station on Friday, where he was arrested, and he will appear in court today and tomorrow. And I want to talk more about that with my next guest. But also, I want to remember when I was just talking to Godfrey, I said they've got a new position. It's for an equality, diversity, and inclusion champion. And this is for the NHS, and they're offering 139,882. They're telling us that we have waiting lists that are years long. We don't need that champion. We absolutely don't. The NHS is already captured by Stonewall anyway. Don't need it. Cameron, this is the best form of charity. Cameron likes doing unseen charity. So yeah, the hours, full-time, posting date 10th of October, and the salary is between 105,000 and 139,000. Obviously depending on how equal, diverse and inclusive you are, presumably. I mean, this, as Professor Carol Sikora says, this level of funding simply cannot be justified. No, it cannot be justified except to the people who have got them captured, such as Stonewall. It's outrageous. It's wrong. It's outrageous. Let me catch up with your comments here. A busy morning. Oh, I'm well behind. Debbie Evans, British what does Patrick Vallance, Debbie, what does Patrick Vallance have to do with the British Heart Foundation? I'm curious. Can you... yes, I've interviewed Dr. Bob Gill before, actually 10 years ago when he was part of a film about the heist of the NHS. I've interviewed him more recently, actually, when I was at TNT. Bob Gill is great. He's great. Thank you, Kath. Everything. Oh, really? Debbie, you're always welcome to join us on the live stream and spill the beans for us. I met Debbie the other week at the UK column day. She's a lovely, bubbly, smiley creation. She is. Rachel is furious. What are you furious about, Rach? Oh, right, about that position. If they were serious, they would train people in sign language, but they won't. They'll buy more rainbow lanyards. Got you, sister. Absolutely. Yes, Stephen. Yes, we love spilled beans, says Craig. We do. Did you know NHS handing out smart rings? Wait, smart rings, is this to do with the smart watches? Is it working on the same basis that it's for the digitalization of our records? And they say that the idea of obviously the smart watches, they're saying, is it will help diabetics, it will help people with heart murmurs. We know it's nothing to do with that. It's about the centralization of our data and information and them tracking us from cradle to grave. And do you know what? On that note, I'm going to bring in my next guest. And as I say, she's a very interesting individual. I had a chat with her last night. And let's bring her in. Let's bring her in. Here she is. Lucy, are you always this glamorous? You are looking hideously glamorous.
I have to say I'm actually in pajamas secretly. So, with wet hair. But yes, good morning.
Good morning to you, everybody. This is Lucy Brown. The tabloids and the newspapers describe her as a fashion photographer, but she is so much more. She is somebody who doesn't hold back, and I really appreciate that about her. I kind of spotted Lucy a little while ago, and I was like, she's really outspoken. She's really forthright. But we love that because a good old Lucy Brown, they're already saying in the comments. Yeah, but we love that though, Lucy, because we're surrounded by cowards. That's the reality. So let's talk a little bit about your history. First of all, many people will know you from your work with Tommy Robinson. What can you tell us about that? How did you get involved with Tommy Robinson?
Well, this is something that the mainstream media sort of don't really want to talk about. But of course, it was the terrorism. Duh. You know, it was terrorism. I was living in London. I'm a Londoner, basically. I lived in London 10 years. And it was the first time I'd felt unsafe getting on the tube. It was the first time I felt unsafe walking down the street. That pissed me off. I think, can I say that? Sorry, that ticked me off.
Who knows?
That ticked me off. But no, I didn't like it. Of course, I had a friend who, her boyfriend was in the restaurant in the London Bridge attack. I mean, it was very close to home, this stuff. And we were being told, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And I was working for a very sort of prestigious fashion post-production house, and it was don't talk about it there. Meanwhile, they could all say anything they wanted about, you know, Trump or the far right. You know, it was very much, you don't talk about this stuff, we can. So I ended up just very alienated from my life in many ways. And then I met these two chaps, George and Kaylin, who were very talented young filmmakers. And essentially that we just sort of formed a bond. We were working together. And Tommy was one of the first people they wanted to interview. So that's how we met, is that we all met just before they did this interview, did some great videos for him. The production was really good. And then, you know, 5 minutes later, we're all working for the Rebel Media together. And he's kind of the front man and we're like the production staff helping produce videos and, yeah, kind of be activists, journalists and activists, I guess.
It didn't end well, though, did it?
It didn't end very well. I'm still a villain to a lot of people, unfortunately, and like I definitely did see like the true face of Tommy. I've seen both. I've seen the nice idealized version. I've seen the flawed individual, and then I've also faced the wrath of when he feels threatened and he has to send people after you, and you have to deal with that. And it's very complicated. But I will say that regardless of that, and again, the media don't want to think about this, that doesn't mean that we don't have a free speech problem in this country. That doesn't mean that, you know, and I think that people really want you to say, oh, well, you know, then I realized that actually everything's fine and I'm left wing again or something. I don't understand the logic there because you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unhear what you've heard. And I think people just seem to think it's like a football team or something. Right, Tommy was mean to me, I'm a liberal now. I don't really,
Right,
it doesn't really
right.
make
And
sense.
it doesn't work like that,
No.
obviously. It's the whole idea of we have to follow the ball and not the player, really, isn't it? That's the reality of what we're dealing
Yeah.
with. And you and I were talking last night, and I said I come traditionally from the left. You say you're very much of a liberal mindset. So we are not your archetypal kind of
No.
far right that we're being deemed tarred and feathered as right now. And that is a problem because, as you say, we have a free speech issue, a censorship issue that is taking place, which is very much part of a globalist agenda anyway. So there was the Unite the Kingdom on Saturday. Tommy wasn't there. Were you surprised?
No, I think that's the other problem. Some of this is complicated. The documentary, his claims in the documentary were libelous. They were found libelous. He shouldn't have published that documentary. I'm ashamed, not ashamed to say, I'm sorry to say that that's pretty much the open shut of that case. So I think, yeah, of course he was going to go to prison. I think he knew that he was going to go at the very least in custody, and then he's got the court case today. But I do think that's pretty open shut. He did something wrong. He should, face the law for that. But yeah, I mean, you can see that there's obviously a lot of people out there who I think he's more of an idea for people. He's kind of more of a symbol for people and an idea.
Yes.
So I've done these long threads and I've broken down sort of all the different various ways of why the case isn't very strong and this and that, and why he's maybe not the most truthful person in the world, on some things. But a lot of people don't care. They just think, well, yeah, but he's a voice. He's a voice. He's saying things that we agree with. He's facing persecution. We want to stand behind him. And it's kind of become that. It's a bit like a Batman. That makes sense.
No, he is almost more of a symbol, isn't he, now? And it's interesting when that happens. So what is the issue in terms of, because I understood that also some of the kind of recent charges stem back to an incident in July to do with where he was refusing access to his mobile phone.
Yeah, so that I'm not too sure about. So I wouldn't, I don't know everything in the ins and outs, so I wouldn't comment on that because I don't know. All I know is what I've been bleating about. The thing that I don't like is this idea of that prison is a death sentence. That does worry me. And as much as he's a so-and-so, I didn't very much like seeing him come out of prison that time. He was very gaunt, and they were saying that they were
I remember that.
tampering with his food and, putting excrement through his windows and putting him in solitary. And I think there's a level of sadism that's kind of left-wing journalists and anti-hate people seem to really relish in the idea of physical harm coming to these people.
You're
and I think
absolutely right. And they always talk about being kind, right? And yet they are some of the most savage people. And I say that as somebody who was amongst them. I used to walk amongst these people, and they want absolute punishment for anybody who isn't part of that purity spiral, right? But I think your insight is really unique in many respects because you were absolutely part of that inner sanctum. And some of the things that you were saying to me last night was really fascinating. And I do believe that we're not talking about it enough. And so obviously 1 minute you're at, the heart of this, you're in the bosom of it, and then you're kicked out. I saw some of the things that were written about you. They were savage. People were threatening your life. It's scary. And I think people, even Tommy's supporters, need to step back a little bit as well, don't they? Because that must have been quite scary for you at that moment in time. You must have felt quite alone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I've been going round and round. I'm trying to write about it, because I don't want to I don't want that to be the only thing that I'm saying. It's obviously it was a horrible experience, but also we have pressing matters to deal with in the UK. And it's sort of like maybe they can learn about that in their own time. But yeah, it was a very strange thing. It was like 1 second we had an event just like the one yesterday with thousands of people, Whitehall. We just pulled it off by the skin of our teeth and worked really hard on it. So 1 minute you're literally on stage with people shouting, screaming, singing and all of that. And then within a couple of days, suddenly you're enemy number one, and just the rumor mill just began. And Tommy definitely added, and then he went to prison last time. So again, this is just taking me back a lot of this. But I had no kind of right to reply, and I didn't want to let people down. And I think that's where I got stuck in between a rock and a hard place. They really, really believed that I was a infiltrator that was blackmailing Tommy, that was calling his wife, screaming down the phone, none of that. And I watched actually a conspiracy about myself grow from afar. And it did give me that perspective of maybe these movements do get, a little bit carried away with themselves sometimes, because then I was an MI5 agent and all of the rest.
Oh, I mean, this is putting a target on your back, though. That is making it makes you vulnerable, and I know how that works, and that is scary if you're not used to it. I mean, being a fashion photographer is a slightly different world to that, right? So
no, exactly. I was more used to just like I don't know. I just never experienced some of the stuff that I came up against. I'd never had people mock my mental health before. That was tough. And I'd never had people trying to work out whether I was a man, just all these kind of things, all these people that one day ago, they were like, the sun shines out of your backside and you can do no wrong. Suddenly they are, every conversation you've ever had with them, they'll twist it, they'll change it. They'll say, she said this, and here's a picture of her looking unflattering, and all this stuff. And you couldn't message people because they'd be screenshotting and they'd be sharing it. So no privacy, lots of mistakes were made. And actually the sort of more hard right then were approaching me, come and be friends with us. And that didn't go very well either. So it was a very vulnerable position. And I still obviously get angry because Tommy did put me there. And I've had to sort of crawl out of it. Now, finally, I think people have realized that, that wasn't the case, that maybe he did tell a few porcupines that actually maybe. But then I think there's a cognitive dissonance because maybe they all threw a rock at me, so they feel a bit bad. So they still have to make me seem like a baddie.
Yeah.
That makes them it makes them the baddies if they actually just decided to dogpile on someone because Tommy said so. That kind of makes them probably feel a bit bad.
Katie wants to know why they turned on you.
Well, again, it's a long story, but essentially we had a big free speech event. Guy called Ali Dawa was invited by Tommy, turned up, got beaten up, got told to leave, got told he wasn't welcome. I had to do all of that. And then I tried to protect him physically because I don't agree with him. I don't like him. I don't agree with anything that, he stands for. But physically, yes, you absolutely protect people physically from a fight. I mean, that's the whole thing, isn't it? I'll defend your right to free speech, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
That's the quote. So I was doing the quote. You've got to be careful. Tommy invited a guy. He turns up to the event. He's told he's not invited. And then he gets beaten up. That's not a good look. So I was trying to manage that situation, which was very much Tommy and this guy. It was between those two. But I got the blame for it. He just told everyone, she invited him because she's a lefty and she really wanted this chap to give a speech, and she was trying to sabotage her, and it was just like, no, so anyway, I got the blame for that, and then it just became, she's fired now, he sacked her, and then she's doing this, she's doing that. So every time I was trying to say, like, look, I'm not going to say anything, just give me what I'm owed and just bugger off because he owed me some money, just give me what I'm owed, I'm going to deal with this, but it wasn't, that became a horrible snowball, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of abusive messages, phone calls, the lot, calling the police. I ended up with PTSD, ended up just jumping around like a bunch of like normal jobs after that, and had to just go offline. So I went offline. And then after that, unfortunately, more problems came from that, kind of right wingers, more to the hard right, then forming parasocial relationships. I ended up with a couple of stalkers. So I've got restraining orders. I've been in the courts. I've been just the past 6 years, ever since that fated moment, have been courts, PTSD, police, GP, doctor's notes. That's been my life for 6 years. And that's probably why I'm quite gobby on Twitter, because it's like, right, I'm back. And I'm not going away this time. With all of these things that have come, and it's just like, and people in the media will just want to make you out to be some ditzy assistant, you're
ditzy, you ain't, sister, not at all. Lucy, your tweets were extremely entertaining throughout the weekend, says Carly. God bless her. Kat says, wow, sorry to hear this. The thing is I what I like about you is you're just sort of kind of like basically honest. You're like, you ask you a question and you just say it. And I know that sometimes that can get people in terrible trouble, but people know in their solar plexus, they can feel it on a gut level whether somebody is honest or not, right? And I do find that about you. So one of the things that we were talking about last night is the danger. So obviously the tarring and feathering of people who are asking legitimate questions about immigration, being tarred and feathered as right wing. And you said you have really deep concerns about this whole idea of like pushing people underground where they can't then speak their mind. Expand on that for us.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I did get approached by, as all this was happening, patriotic alternative Mark Collette got in touch. He was very nice. Come and hang out with us. That didn't go down very well. I made some very silly decisions. And I think it did actually, being pushed out of the Tommy Brigade, I did go a little bit further down to the right because I suppose I had nowhere else to. I felt like my liberal past was in the past. Lots of friends, that was it. I knew I was not going to get any birthday invites anymore ever again. That happens when you stand next to Tommy Robinson. Is very much that door is shut. So you join this movement, you get kicked out of this movement. You end up being embraced by another one. And then what happened is I was just vulnerable. I was saying too much. I was just very much in a vulnerable state. Looking back, just absolutely not thinking about who I was talking to, just messaging people, that just personal stuff. And I think I've seen it happen with other people. And it's just very easy. You're just looking for a friend in the void that doesn't want to hate you or kill you or, say all this nasty stuff. And you'll take anyone being nice to you. And in that case, the people then being nice to me ended up being the people who would go on to harass, stalk, just cause more problems down the road. So that's the problem. Is I want all these things to be on the surface. I want them to be on our telly. I want them to be in Parliament, people talking about them openly, because otherwise you end up going down this rabbit hole. You're in all these Telegram groups. People are infighting every 5 minutes. Someone's got it in for you. You've put all this stuff on the internet. That's there forever. And it just doesn't really help anyone. It just doesn't help. And I just want everything to be just out in the open and visible, because you've got young people going down this road that are on prevent lists now and all this kind of stuff. And I don't really like seeing teenagers kind of going through that, and it's not fair. But then, if they go to school and everything they're being told is very much government line stuff, then where are they going to have those discussions? Where are they going to? They're going to search for people that are like-minded, and they're going to want to stretch their legs a bit there. And there just isn't. I just don't feel like. I feel like we're a long way off having that ground for people to actually discuss this stuff, and it's a shame. But then you see the New Culture Forum, you see Talk TV and LBC. I think have been quite good after the riots. We're seeing more, and GB News documentaries are quite and Spiked, and so we are seeing some more mainstream stuff, which is good. But back then, it wasn't nearly as much. People weren't talking about this nearly as much.
And we need to talk about it, and there need not be shame attached to it. And we shouldn't automatically demonize people who feel that this is a conversation that needs to be talked about. At the election, the huge volume of people wanted to talk about immigration, but it wasn't on the agenda for anybody, which tells us in its own right that it is an agenda. And actually, what I discovered when I did an interview with Dr. Simon Elmer the other week, the small boats are not the problem. It is the legitimate immigration that is bringing in the vast numbers. And we should be able to talk about this without being deemed racist. I have a mixed race child, very much into multiculturalism, always have been. But I think that everybody has a right to have their voices heard. And I think that's where it's gone really badly wrong in our country, is immediately what Keir Starmer did was make those like you the enemy. And that is a problem, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I've been saying this more and more, is that I think what they actually didn't like is the fact that we were fairly normal. I don't think people liked seeing Tommy Robinson with essentially 3 queer kids, 3 fashion media kids in their 20s. Back in 2017. I think that was a threat. And I've been told actually that, especially one thing that these anti-hate charities do not like, it's young, well-dressed, well-mannered British men and women.
Like a hope, not hate, you're talking about as one example.
Like
when you
that,
say,
as an example. But yes,
they like the Centre for Digital Hate, all of those kind of things. Yeah.
But they are very, very threatened by just a normal, ideally young, nice looking, funny, well presented young men and women speaking openly and, intelligently. That really, they didn't like that. So that's the thing. Tommy, they can deal with. Tommy, there's a laundry list of things that you can say Tommy's, not. He's not the most, he's a bit flawed. Let's say that. He's a bit flawed. But when it's someone that's young, fresh, doesn't have a weird, digital footprint or anything like that, we really noticed they really came in very hard. And I noticed, I tweeted yesterday, if you actually look at the way that they did attack us, it was kind of stalkerish. You know, we had trackers put on our cars. We were followed. We were having our locations leaked to Antifa, who then came and beat us up and all this kind of stuff. And why should anyone, but particularly like, say, a young woman, have to deal with the threat of violence just for speaking out about, say, immigration or terrorism? Or like, why should we have had to deal with that? Why did we have to have sort of paid state stalkers basically trying to shut us up all the time?
Yeah.
That didn't help. Of course, that made us quite double down and stay where we are, because then it became an attack. You know, we're them and you're us. So, okay, so now we have to, but I would have quite happily sat down with a whole lot, hey, any day. In fact, I think I tried to plenty of times. I think many
that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me about you.
Exactly. Yeah. All they needed to do was an email. They didn't have to spend all this time running after us, like, catch me if you can. I mean, I wanted, if anything, to have the conversation with the far left and say, look, you guys, like, this isn't, you've got it a bit wrong here. And like, you're beating people up that aren't Nazis. It's just all this kind of stuff.
Let me ask you this. There's some comments going on. What do you think when people say, for example, that Tommy Robinson is like a Mossad asset? Is there any truth in that, in your opinion?
I can't say that I noticed anything like that. I mean, from what my experience with him, I just thought he was a bit of a hothead and someone that just decides what he's doing that morning sometimes.
Right.
I didn't see anything Mossad-y. Like I said, we were definitely followed. I did see cars following us and stuff like that. Yeah, there's some shady stuff, but if there was anything like that, I wouldn't have been privy to it. I wasn't even privy to the donations or anything like that. I was very much just kind of kept out of it. So if he is a Mossad agent, he fooled me, because I didn't see any evidence that points towards that.
Let me ask you, Mel said, did you know that he identified as a Zionist back in 2018?
Yes, I did. And, you know, I just think, for me, the pressing matter is Britain. So it wasn't really something that I was that fussed with. I know it's not the answer you want, but
it's gone by the wayside, hasn't it? The fact is that overseas interests seem to be uppermost and the priority, whereas we keep wanting to bring it back to our own shores. And that, I think that's almost what you're fighting against, isn't it? Is you want home affairs to be top of the agenda, and they're not.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and also, there are lots of people out there that will happily throw, you know, a few £1,000s at an activist and say, can you speak about this? Like Russia, for example, just got caught out, didn't they, with all these YouTubers in America? So, of course, there's going to be interference. Of course, there's going to be that kind of stuff going on. And there probably was with us. I would say, in a way, I would say that anti-hate charity that I don't want to get in trouble with, but just them following us around and threatening my team, but, you know, allegedly threatening, blackmailing and all this kind of stuff, that was, in a sense, felt like domestic interference at the very least. So I wouldn't put past them if there's foreign interference. We know in Saudi Arabia they have this thing called the flies, which is all these bot farms that influence elections, all that kind of stuff. And Russia, probably is up to no good. But it's hard to say, isn't it? All I just want to say what you see. Like, here's the problems we're having. I don't really know if someone's Mossad or not, and I just don't really want to get running around in circles trying to figure it out. You know, he wore a T-shirt that said Mossad. Okay. I'm just not the person to discuss that.
No, I take your point. Your priorities are different. I take it. So moving forward, what can we do? We seem to be in a bind at the moment. We're in a situation where there's been this chilling impact on people, that people are scared to speak their minds, which is why I really respect you. People are scared to say what they think. They're worried about they're going to be banged up for 2.5 years if they dare to even dissent at all against Keir Starmer's government. How can we move forward with all that? Well,
you know, I think that I don't like this idea that rioters are going to get killed and attacked and slashed in prison. I don't like that very much. And I do think that, for a start, I really want to actually know if that is happening. And I want to see reports. I want to see evidence. I think that should be something that we look at that Sky presenter that basically said they're going to get beaten up in prison. I don't like this. It seems a bit authoritarian to me, basically. It seems, I know that some of them are violent, but some of it's a mum that wrote something on Facebook. And, you know, do I like the idea of her being attacked? Not really.
Right.
So I do think that stuff like that, I think people need to be it's almost like a court case, isn't it? Get all your evidence together, keep a record, you know, of anything that's dodgy that's going on, keep a record of it just in case, for yourself or to give to journalists if you want to whistleblow. On top of that, I would just say, use the tools available to you. I use ChatGPT quite a lot because it helps to ask questions that you might be a bit too embarrassed to ask, you know, on a podcast or in real life. But you can kind of work things out and you can ask it all sorts of stuff. And I think we need more writers, we need more data analysts, you know, like I think Matthew Goodwin's quite good with that, and some of the people over at GB News. It's like improving a lot. So we need to see the data. We need to see the data. We also need to learn about the law, because I actually think that what's happening to British people, British people, I mean, like ethnically Scots, English, Welsh and Irish, I think that what's happening might actually be illegal and in breach of our human rights. And I think that that's also something that we need to look at, because demography is destiny. I'm not racist, you're not racist, but demography is destiny. If there's more guests than the host, then it's no longer home, is it? That's the problem. It doesn't matter who they are. We need to talk about this, and that needs to be a conversation.
We do.
Now, without saying racist, dumb stuff. You know, that needs to happen.
Exactly. And actually, I think somebody like you is very well placed to do that, because I think that you can appeal to different demographics, which is what is needed, actually. It needs to break away from this whole idea that, you know, it's kind of an army of, you know, working class thugs who, you know, peeing up against the cenotaph or that, because we've seen all those images this weekend, right? And it's like, we need to get away from that. And so I think that a voice like yours is really welcome, because you're asking legitimate questions. We must be allowed to ask questions. Otherwise, what are we? And that, I think, is really troubling. But I do really appreciate the fact that you are literally no holds barred, which is fantastic. It is so appreciated.
I always considered myself not necessarily an employee of Tommy or the Rebel, but a kind of freelance employee of like England.
Freelance employee of England.
I am driven by this land. I only realized we have something to lose when the terror attacks started happening, and how quickly we can lose all of these things that we take for granted. So I work for Britain or England or whatever. I don't work for any person, but I think we need to just respect and protect this place, because it's going to get a lot. I think we're going to see a lot of horrible stories in the next 10 years, and I think we really need to start pushing back. Now is always a good time, you know. 10 years ago would have been good, but now it's now, so we'll do it now.
Now is as good a time as any. Let's do it. So what are your immediate plans, apart from being somebody? And also, can I just say, I'm pretty sure I've seen you being outspoken about Andrew Tate as well. You don't mess around. You're like literally prepared to, because here's the thing, I'm completely anti-hero. Like when I say that, I'm so sick of leaders, right? Because I believe that we need to stand in our own sovereignty. We can do that, and all of that good stuff. I think that's all really, really good. But you've literally, like, you have said truths about the heroes of the movement. And what drives you, Lucy? What drives you to do this?
I think that's a good question that no one in the mainstream media ever asks. But, you know, the reason I got into this in the first place was because I was a victim of domestic abuse. And so I don't like being lied to. I don't like being gaslighted. And I don't like being lied to by the government, especially, or by a boyfriend, you know, like, so that's what got me into it. Now it's because I survived, you know, being horribly defamed by right-wing guys, you know, and having them, they pushed me under the carpet, and I dealt with all this stuff. And I very nearly, you know, it was touch and go. Like I said, I was attacked viciously. And I think there was a part of me where it was a bit life or death. Like I may not have been around here. You know, it was a very, very, so I think it's that thing of where you just feel like you've survived it, and you feel a bit like kind of invincible afterwards, because you think, well, I'm still here for a reason, and I'm not going to, you know, I've gone through all that. That was actually worse than anything anyone could do. So I'm going to crack on. And if people attack you publicly, you think, well, I've already dealt with that privately. So it's actually, it kind of falls off your back a bit. And also it's just the truth, isn't it? The truth is the truth. Like I said, I've said stuff about Andrew Tate because I fully believe that that man is guilty and going to prison. And I think that any self-respecting person, especially right-wingers, need to really have a serious think about promoting this guy.
I agree. I agree in terms of that, what you've just said there, like the promotion of him. I mean, he's literally said enough. He's told us plenty about himself over the last 10 years, right?
And Andrew Tate, don't get it twisted. Andrew Tate represents exactly the type of person I've just been fighting in the courts, you know, stalker, you know, thinks he's above the law, thinks he's God, says stuff about you, privately litigating to keep you quiet. I can see this guy, and I know this guy, and I fought people like him before. So, you know, like, he's just an obvious, like, thing that we need to like deal with. But yeah, it's the question is just like, what kind of society do we want? And I don't want a society where young men are being trained how to groom and assault and basically be abusive to their partners and exploit girls. We shouldn't be, you know. So there's so many like, you know, crossing things, but ultimately it's just, what kind of society do we want? That's the main line that I just want to stick with, you know.
And I think it's really important to drill down like that. And you're right, because it is all crossing over, isn't it? Since 2020, like there are people who agree with some of the things I said that I would never, ever agree with on many, many aspects. But again, I think it is this whole thing of we have to really, like, we have to get away from people, and we have to focus on messages, don't we? We have to focus on the importance of messages.
Yeah, because one thing we don't have is time. You know, we are running out of time.
Right.
And the thing is, you can lock Tommy Robinson away, you can lock Andrew Tate away, you can lock them all away, throw away the key. We're still going to have these problems. We're still going to have people that are going to be talking about these problems. And I don't think people have thought that far ahead. So if anything, Tommy being gone, it might mean that it's more decentralized, that now you've got all these other people that are going to, you know, maybe not take his place, but form a kind of force of, you know, pushback. And not like violent or anything, but we need to use our voices. Our voices are our weapon, our voices and our intelligence, you know, and I just think we are being gaslit. I think that what's happening to us in many respects is racist. You know, women are being attacked and they're trying to feel sorry for the person that's attacked them. No, that person was racist to you if they punched you.
I know. Yeah, I hear you. But also, it feels like we're in a post-truth era, though. When you say we're being gaslit, we are, like, on a constant basis, aren't we? We're being told, no, this is good for you, when we can patently see it's not good for us. So I think we need to get back to just kind of straight, no nonsense talking again, which is why I think there is absolutely a place for somebody like you, Lucy, because you appear to be fearless, but are you?
No, because now I've got something to lose. I've got a lovely partner, you know, a life that we're going to build together. So actually, you know, I'm not totally fearless because I'm like bringing children into this world and be around and all that kind of stuff. Right. But there's just like a stubbornness. There's a real stubbornness. And I am actually, as angry as I am with right-wing people and all these characters, my anger always remains really with the government and these anti-hate people and the media who told people we were racist, told them we were bad people, didn't tell them when we got beaten up, chased us around, stalked us, essentially made it their life's mission to make sure nobody listened to us. And I think that's worse than Tommy or Andrew Tate or whatever. That's all kind of in the over there pile. We wouldn't even need to have joined the rebel media or anything like that if that wasn't the case. So a lot of us feel very pushed by the extremism and the radical kind of position of the left, which is, if you ask a question about immigration, you must be racist, you must be a Nazi, you must be evil. Of course not. But that attitude, I would say, is more damaging than anything. You know, Tommy Robinson shouldn't exist, really. You know, if they weren't doing that, he wouldn't have 1 million followers. He wouldn't have a platform.
You're absolutely right. He is. He's almost like a reaction, isn't he, to what's going on? And that's why. And I think many people just feel completely kicked to the curb. I think a lot of certainly working class people, a lot of working class males feel as if they've been made redundant. And I wonder whether an Andrew Tate is almost like an antidote to what has been going on over the last 10 years. And that is increasing feminization of men as one example, right? And kind of like demasculizing men. I'm not quite sure if that's a word, but you take my point, don't you? And I almost think that Andrew Tate, like Tommy Robinson, is a response to a situation. Andrew Tate is a response to a situation. We need to get some kind of compromises going on, don't we? And that is, men can still be men without having to be brutes, right?
Yeah, it seems like very much you're right. I mean, is that the big secret with people like Tate and Tommy, is that they're the mirror? They're a mirror to society's failings, you know, and maybe people just have this very infantilized view. If we lock them away, the problem goes away. No, that's not how that works. No. And yes, they are kind of monsters in a way of this. They're kind of the Frankenstein's monster, but that's the problem. They shouldn't need to exist. They shouldn't exist. This shouldn't be happening. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Andrew Tate definitely has filled a void for young men. It's just a shame that he happens to be a terrible, genuinely nasty person that will and has clearly abused women and promoting abusing women and all this stuff. Why is this guy like giving any credence? But because it's because maybe people think that it's that bad, that they'll they'll wipe that bit from their kind of brain, and they'll listen to it in the gym, and they'll think, yeah, you know, I'm going to be a man, I need to stick up for this. It's frustrating, isn't it? Because if it were up to me, those people wouldn't even be things that we need to talk about. But here we are.
I hear you. Absolutely. Absolutely. One day we're going to be talking about you, Lucy. I just feel it. I absolutely feel it. And I'll say, I interviewed her and I thought she was absolutely kick-ass. And listen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Greatly appreciate it. Even in your PJs, you still look glamorous as hell. And take good care of yourself, Lucy. Thank you for being who you are. Brilliant. Everybody, Lucy Brown. Wonderful. Yes, I love it. I just love her straightforwardness. I just love that. I mean, it's just so rare. Yes. Farage owns the Reform Party, which means he can act like the kid who owns the football when trying to play a match. Now, talking about the Reform Party, guys, did you see what Richard Tice had to say? Did you see that? Richard Tice yesterday on GB News being interviewed by Camilla Tominey. And she asked him, let me just find what was actually said, if I can find it. But she asked him, because I want to be able to quote him exactly. She asked him what he thought about Tommy Robinson, right? And bear with me, people. Oops, I want Tice. No, I've got the wrong one. I'm sure I'll find it. Yeah, she asked him what he thought about Tommy Robinson. And he said, I'm determined to find this because I actually thought it was extraordinary, because I felt that he was literally sort of puking on the very people who had already supported him. Okay. And there we go. He was asked by her what he made of Tommy Robinson and whether he is a good guy. And Richard Tice responded in this image, no, all of that lot we have nothing to do with. We want nothing to do with them. And she said, yeah, but you know, there's people out there with signs about two-tier Kia and you agree with them. And he said, we agree with ourselves. I'm not aligning ourselves with Tommy Robinson's lot in any shape or form. But isn't Tommy Robinson's lot, as he dismissed them, isn't a lot of them people who voted for reform? I mean, it's extraordinary. Isn't that a Gerald Ratner moment? Do you remember where Gerald Ratner talked about how cheap Ratner's jewelry was? Right? No, I don't trust Tice either. Hope not at all. They lost Katie's vote. Oh, Farage kept quiet too. What a joke, says Jasmine. Markson calls him a tosser. Holly says no balls Tice. I see. So you're angry, and I don't blame you, frankly. Rockshot is in Tampa, Florida. Oddly, we have the exact same problems here. Kawinky Dink. No, the global plan. Absolutely, Rockshot. I think we can all relate to that, can't we? Love to Tampa in Florida, by the way. What's your weather like? What's your weather like over there? Farage is a problem. They're all rent-a-gobs, says Wee Fat Sugar. I can never understand people who defend Tate. He tells us exactly who he is all the time. He does. Extraordinary. And Peter, you're so right, of course, that Tice is pro-jab, pro-lockdown, pro-Zelensky. Slippery Tice showed his colours. Everything's a problem. And Sail Away says, another example of a thick as mince puppetition. I like puppetition. Sarah. Well, Sarah is not having it, right? I turned over. Yep. Love to Florida, says the Curly Crew. Bad day in Tampa equals glorious summer in UK. Yeah, healing the silence. They all support each other behind the curtains, but once they're on stage, they act like they have no idea what's happening. I hear you, my friend. Okay, let's talk about the whiteout yesterday. Now, in the UK, and all of our overseas friends, tell me if you're experiencing it as well, but in the UK, the sky was egregious yesterday, like absolutely horrendous. And so many of you good and wonderful people have sent me brilliant images, and I intend to use them if I can. Let's see what we've got. So first of all, let's start off with Karen in Maidstone. She sent me a video. She said, I swear that Karen actually has some of the worst weather manipulation I've seen. It's that bad. It's actually that bad. So this is Karen's. Let's bring up Karen's. Where we go.
I didn't set an alarm, but luckily I woke up.
That's thick, isn't it? Look at that. All those zigzags. Thank you, Karen. And also, is this a video? That is from Raymond, I think. And I think that is from you, Raymond. Raymond in Cambridge, 11 a.m. on 26th of October. And we also have Dame Mitchie on X said, I shared my happy place with a friend this morning. We were having a glorious walk in the sunshine, but within an hour, this happened. I told her to look up. Her response was, how weird. I've never seen that before. And Mitchie sent me all of these images and on X saying, I really don't know, Sonia, but my gut says this isn't right. Of course, it's not right. But this is also great. John has sent us a time-lapse video from Kent. Now, this is fascinating, right? This is fascinating. Look at this. Check this out. He said, I took the following time-lapse footage yesterday morning. I felt it may be of interest. Too right, John. Too right. I wonder if I can bring that up as a, let me just see. Let's let that roll for a little minute. That looks so eerie, doesn't it? Yeah, sure, that's planes. Sure, that's normal. Yeah, exactly, George. Planes have been busy. Exactly, Eleanor. Absolutely. Curly has been waiting for a good time lapse. Well, we've got one. Look at that. Look at that. KB says weather warfare. Mate, I wonder if I can look at that. Weather warfare. You're absolutely right, KB. Same thing here yesterday. That is extraordinary. Thank you for doing that, John. Drumstick says, yeah, absolutely, Drum. That is, isn't it? Where's that Drumstick comment just gone to? It is that is a great time lapse. Really appreciate that. Mel's would love to meet up with Karen. Mel's is just outside Maidstone. Oh, that's interesting, Frank. The sun is dreaming the earth. That's the perfect evidence, says Peter. That is actually astonishing, John. That's astonishing. And synchronized soul. Yeah, exactly. Synchronized soul lives on a flight path. So do I, to a certain degree, on the way to Heathrow. I think they call it the world's busiest airport, don't they? And it's not like that every day. Yes, Jasmine, they've admitted Geo-Engineering. Look at the weather last 10 years. Absolutely. That is actually astonishing, John. Yes. And Jack says, I get it. There is something odd. So let's see the evidence of what is actually being done and why. Well, they do frequently admit it to us, Jack. And certainly, like on the UK government website, they often put out tenders for this. But I think that is actually, a compelling video. Thank you for that, John. Really, truly, thank you for that. Compelling. Absolutely compelling. Oh, Ian, I subscribed to Dane Wigington yesterday. Now, I sent Dane an email last week. Let me chase that up. Hologram, says Frank. Patricia, I don't know what to say to you, my love. I don't know what to say to you. Craig said that is climate change right there. Yes, Christine, just shows how it builds up. Well done. I think that is absolutely compelling. I almost want to put that out as a video in its own right. Brilliant. Yes, Luke, yesterday was a bad day all over for chemtrails by the looks of it. Happens all the time in Denmark, says Randy. Q, Sonia, re-private jets. Will the decadence of Led Zeppelin ever be matched? Interesting. Interesting. Is it drones? Absolutely horrific, says Jean. There's hardly any insects and very few birds, I've noticed. See, we're not all having an episode, right? Our eyes are accurately showing us what is going on. Thank you very much for that, John. That is really, truly appreciated. And from all of you, lovely Karen and lovely Raymond, all of you, really appreciate it. Keep sending in your images because obviously now we can play them, which is really important. Yes, and let me see. Eco Fascist Sadiq Khan. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to tell you this, but I really loathe that man with a passion, right? I really loathe Sadiq Khan. I think he's a horrendous individual, and he's obviously part of a multitude of agendas, not least he leads C40 cities. He's very much about 15-minute cities. But we were promised that the whole idea of the congestion charge, which, and I'm waving my head like this because I never believed a word of it, was because of petrol and diesel vehicles. But they will now, from 2025, they will now be charging for electric vehicles to drive through London. So it was never about us getting electric vehicles. Not that I did, not that I will, but it was never about that. It was just about punishing individuals for driving, right? You will owe nothing. You will be happy. So yes, so the idea is that, and that's a £15 daily charge, right? That's £15. And if your vehicle is not up to scratch, you get another, I think it's £12.50 on top of it. So it's like, it is almost close to 30 quid for people to drive through their home city. That is astonishing. That's astonishing. This is scary. I knew this was happening, but I didn't know exactly how it happened. Well, I think that is evidence. I think that's absolute evidence what we've seen there. Well, what's that? Odd is evil. Mess around with nature, and nature won't hesitate to put you in your place. Do not mess with nature. My brother used to live on a flight path when he lived in Surrey, says Stephen. Yeah, it isn't like that every day. It's a lie. So anyway, it's the whole big green agenda. We know it's an absolute flaming lie. It really is, and quite sick of it. This whole idea that convert to electric vehicles and everything will be fine. No. From 2025, you will be charged just the same way as if you had a diesel or petrol. In fact, they're actually talking about banning completely diesel and petrol in London. They're talking about it. Ed Miliband, I see Ed Miliband has been in the States offering our money left, right and centre to Tony Podesta. How nice. And what was interesting, of course, so Ed Miliband is leading our climate change initiatives, a man who couldn't get voted into office. And I remember when he wanted to be prime minister and I for the 2015 election. And what was interesting was those Podesta emails that were leaked via Wikipedia. You remember? Said rather a lot about pizza, if I remember correctly. But those Podesta emails also leaked about what Tony Blair thought about Ed Miliband at the time. And Tony Blair absolutely believed there was no chance that Labour were going to get in with Ed Miliband leading them. Guess what happened? And now, of course, Ed Miliband is absolutely leading the charge with billions of pounds of our money. And Godfrey Bloom is absolutely right. The green agenda is a lie. And not only is it to enable their friends, all these wind farms and all the initiatives, and how much money is being made through it, but also let us not forget what we talked about the other week. And that is one of the Rousing women, very, very, very rich people, has backed Ed Miliband. And her organization is part of the green agenda. So these people, like the Gateses of this world, they're like, I'm a philanthropist. I give billions of my money away. Yeah, but you give it away with your left hand and you take it back in with your right because it's a cash cow to you because you make money from it. And that is exactly what is happening with Labour at this moment in time. Ed Miliband said, I've been in the US this week meeting energy and climate figures from around the world. Britain is back in the business of global climate leadership. Weather changes, climate changes. We know that, right? We know that. And I was reading a report from Net Zero Watch. I must get somebody on from there. And they were saying that as it stands at this moment in time, net zero could cost £300,000 per household. £300,000. Some people will never see that amount of money in their entire lifetime, which is because I always ask, right, when they talk about we're in debt, I always say, who are we in debt to? Like nobody's ever given me an answer who we're in debt to. Who are we in debt to when they talk about this 22 billion black hole? Who are we in debt to? And it's going to be the same thing again, because obviously not every household is going to be able to stump up £300,000 to cover the net zero agenda. And so it will become obviously part of debt. And current technology, the cost to 2050 is 10 trillion. 10 trillion and costs are 10 times the benefit, says Net Zero Watch. And I believe them. I've interviewed people from there before. It's ridiculous what we're being put through. Absolutely ridiculous. When I know we're heading into winter and the whole issue of how they started on pensioners, first of all, obviously with the winter fuel allowance. And we've seen it in the demonisation of people on benefits. And bear in mind, the vast majority of people on benefits are actually working. The working poor. The working poor. It's outrageous. You should not need to have any form of benefit if you're working. You shouldn't. And that because our priorities are all wrong. So people who work at Tesco, they get, tax credits. Why are we having to do that? Tesco should just be paying them a better wage. That's what should happen. And obviously Tesco make huge returns, as indeed do all of these corporations, while we continue to pay from every angle. I think we must be the most taxed in history. It's astonishing. We're literally taxed for existing. We're taxed on what we buy. We're taxed on our earnings. We're taxed for our vehicles. None of it goes in the places that we want it to. It just makes me sick. It just has to stop. Somehow it all has to stop. And I'm not sure how. Talk to you about an interesting story that came across my table a couple of days ago, because a friend of mine in New York had heard me talking about a lot of British women who seem to be disappearing near water and in water. A friend of mine said, have you heard about all these male bodies that are being washed up in Brooklyn? I'm like, what? So I looked into it, Jamaica Bay. And some people are comparing it to the Bermuda Triangle. Of course, the Bermuda Triangle very famously was a stretch of water where people, ships just disappeared, never to be seen again. And what's happened in Jamaica Bay, at least 8 dead bodies have been discovered in and around the area over the past year, just over the past year. And they all appear to be males. Although, no, there's 2 unidentified females, but all of the males have been identified. And there is deep concern. My friend was saying that locals are really concerned that this is ritualistic, that there are rituals being carried out on these people, and then they're being sort of dumped at sea and then washed up. And I just found it really curious because the police are giving out a lot of mixed messages about it in New York. So there was, for example, a 44-year-old Irishman's headless, armless torso washed up at Breezy Point Beach, right? And headless and armless, that absolutely sounds ritualistic to me. Tell me what you're thinking in the comments to this, because I think it is very, very curious. Whenever there's water involved, I do think that is curious, because we know that water is often used as part of a ritual ceremony. And certainly all these people in 1 year, 8 people washing up in the same spot seems really curious to me. Really curious to me. And I've no idea what is going on. Let me catch up with the comments here. I think it's a ritual, and it's possibly, that's interesting. That just went. Where did that just go to? Crazy Bunny said, I think it's a ritual and it's possibly on an energy ley line. And water absolutely is cleansing. Yes, I'm behind. I think chemtrails are about polluting the air. That's all right, AK Very. You know what we're like here. We can jump from one thing to another, like aluminium, to make us sick done. Not so much for weather manipulation. Interesting. They fooled everyone into believing petrol was scarce, started a rush. This is about going back to what we've just been talking about. Started the rush. The truth was they needed to get rid of stock before it went out of date. That's our government. So cheeky, eh? We know what's going on, don't we? Not an ounce of truth of either statement. Rockshot is not impressed with Kamala's lies about her heritage. High-class childhood from slave owners. No black blood whatsoever. Yeah, but how convenient, though, Rockshot. How very convenient, right? Stephen thinks there is something very strange about these women drowning in rivers. Yeah, so it seems very much to be women drowning in rivers in the UK. And then when we go on to kind of continental Europe, it's been missing British males. And then in Brooklyn, there are 6 males who have washed up and 2 unidentified females. No idea. I mean, the thing is, I don't claim to have any answers to any of these things. I just like to raise up things that are curious to me. because it doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. And I'll tell you what doesn't make any sense. Let's bring him up. This filthy beast. This filthy, disgusting beast. Do you know who this is? This is the Minister of Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice. His name is Mohammed Khalid Hanafi, and he is in Afghanistan. He's just added another new ban to women's voices in Afghanistan. And so obviously it is always an escalation of restrictions with these women-hating men. I mean, there's no other description for them, what women are having to go through. But now it's reached the point, this is absolutely insane. Hanifi, by the way, he's blacklisted by the UN Nations. He's sanctioned by the European Union. But he stated that adult women must not perform takbir, which is Islamic invocation, or recite the Quran aloud in the presence of other women. So now this man is now stopping women discussing Quran studies with each other. Like they're not, it's almost like women, in his opinion, are too stupid, too dangerous to be discussing this without male intervention. Absolutely detest people like that. I see, now this is really where it's things like this that I really believe that we should be putting more energy into, regarding issues of what's happening to women around the world. Where are the international communities when this beast is deciding that women can't talk to each other? Where are they? Can somebody explain that to me, please? I'd really like to know. Right? I've seen women get beaten and strapped in Afghanistan because they've had a relationship outside of marriage, right? Or they're not in marriage, they're just having relations before being married. Absolutely unconscionable to have to live like this. There's moments like this that I am really grateful for where I was born, obviously, because I would hate to be born in a land where men like this are ruling. And obviously, Keir Starmer's bad enough because he wants to take away all our freedom of speech. And actually, his government don't know what a woman is, so which is halfway there, really. Shug is talking about going. I am completely behind with the comments, by the way. Shug, moving water creates energy. It does. It does indeed. Yes, but who backs him up? Says Jan. Deliberately inflicting these people on their people to cause problems. Yes. Kennedy says, other than boycotting the big supermarkets, which is highly unlikely to be achieved at a national level, is there not any way for these companies to be forced to lower their sick, unjustified prices? Kennedy, we couldn't believe it the other day, right? Like my daughter and I were having a conversation about the actual increase in our food shop. It is actually shocking what has been allowed to happen. So obviously what they did in 2020, biggest transference of wealth from small businesses to large corporations, stakeholder capitalism, in our lifetime. And then these big supermarkets, they have the monopoly and they could charge us whatever they want. Like I saw online, like there's a particular jam I like, and it's lovely. It's gorgeous. And it's expensive, really, for jam, I think, for the most part. It's like £3, but it's being sold online. I'm not kidding to you. It's being sold online on Amazon for £6.49. A bottle of jam. A bottle of jam. What? And Crazy Bunny is not impressed. She said 264 likes, 700 watching. Bet you we've got more, Crazy Bunny. Let's have a look at our figures, the analytics. Let's have a look. What have we got? People. Let me just see. We have got 2,412 views and we haven't got that many likes. And Crazy Bunny and the Synchronized Soul, I'm calling you the same thing. Crazy Bunny and Shin are not impressed. Please can you like? Please can you like? Right, what else? Trent Hart. Let me bring this up. I think this is really important, right? Is that we often talk about survivors around here. I certainly do. And I've worked with a lot of survivors, and some have been put through hell, frankly, and some manage their experience in different ways, and some by creativity. And I wanted to show you the art of one man called Trent, because it's phenomenal. Let me bring it up on the screen. There we go. This is my very dodgy recording of it. But look at it. I'm just going to let it run as I talk to you. So Trent was actually a victim of the Medhamsley Detention Centre. It was a prison for young male offenders. It was near Concert in Durham. And from 1960s until the late 1980s, more than 1,800 living former inmates have reported sexual and physical abuse by staff. And Trent was one of them. Trent was abused by the lead man. And this is how Trent manages his experience these days. And I think his art is actually phenomenal. I really do. And you know, I've said to Trent, you'd be very welcome to come on the stream and talk to us, Trent. And Trent doesn't want necessarily publicity. But I had made a comment about Bob Moran's art. And so Trent sent me his art. And I was actually blown away because some of that, once you start to break down the detail, look at this little spitting image of Tony Blair, but it's so detailed. And oftentimes there are like children hidden in these details, and there's corruption. And it's, again, it's the transference of wealth from the poor to the rich. And I think one day, Trent, your art is going to be in a gallery. Look at that, 8 years. I think Trent's art, I'm going to just run that again. I just think it's actually phenomenal. I think your work is amazing, Trent. And I do believe that one day it's going to be recognised. And the thing about Medhamsley, they've got an inquiry ongoing. And the things that went on there were just unconscionable. Not only were the boys were sent there, they were not hardened criminals. They were often like petty thieves, right? And that applied to Trent. He was not a hardened criminal. And these young boys were sent there, and it was under Margaret Thatcher's short, sharp shock treatment. And it was a number of centres all over the UK. And these boys were not only sexually abused, they were slapped, they were punched, they were kicked in the head, they were just denigrated. And I think it's absolutely brilliant that Trent has been able to take all of that anger, all of that hurt, all of that betrayal that he suffered at Medhamsley and pour it into an outlet like his creativity. And I'd love to have a psychiatrist at this moment, like looking at Trent's work and being able to pick out, you know, what kind of stands out to them. Because look at that, at the center of all of that is money, as one example. Really brilliant stuff, Trent. I am so impressed with your art. I really am. And feel free, people, to his face in lots of one eye, says Cheeky Spy. Incredible detail, says Julie. Yes, it is. But it is lots of one eye. You're absolutely right, Cheeky. And remember Borstal. Well, that's really what it was, Eric. It was Borstal. That's exactly what it was. I remember Thatcher's short, sharp shock policy. Wow, the imagination and talent here is amazing. It is. It absolutely is. And thank you. I get most of my stuff from eBay. What have I just... Oh, I see. I'm going back to what I was talking about. I've just clicked on that. The movie Scum. Anybody remember that? I couldn't have been that old. I must have been about 10 or 11 when Scum came out. And it was, what was his name? Winston, who played one of the younger. And the level of violence that went on in there, I think... Hats off, Trent, says Kath. Kath, don't you come from Concert? You must have heard of Medhamsley. It's actually on YouTube, is it? Scum is on YouTube. Yes, and it was just the level of violence that took place there. Well, people, Trent was experiencing all of that. Trent was experiencing all that. Yeah, it is wonderful and amazing. Really impressive, Trent. We love your stuff. Yeah, you remember Scum, Crazy Bunny? That was wild, wasn't it? That just kind of changed my attitude so much about what was going on. And I came from that kind of background. As I've told you before, my brother Jesse was the brother who we were so poor. We couldn't always eat every day. You didn't, oftentimes it was like cornflakes without milk, but water. We were extremely impoverished financially. And my brother Jesse, I'm sure I've told you all this, ripped the lead off my school roof. And the day after it happened, my head teacher, I was in school, my head teacher walked up and down saying, "Evil visited the school last night." My brother wasn't evil. He fed our family. And he's now part of my family committee in heaven. Blue Nomad loves Scum. That's it, Ray Winston. Well done. I can always rely on this lot to... Yes, Ray Winston, absolutely. Oh my God, the greenhouse scene, MB. Oh, goodness me. Yes, awful. Yes, Pink Diamond. Love me, bruv. But yes, no longer here with us. But yeah, took care of us as a family in the absence of a father. Thank you, my brother, for doing that. I very much appreciate you. So yeah, that's Trent's work, and I come from that similar background that Trent would have come from, and I know how young working class boys were demonized, and girls as well. My sister was put into a care home for skipping school a few times. They just went after her. It's awful. Right, close to finishing up, gorgeous people. Let me just double check that I have covered everything today. Is there anything you feel I've missed? I don't think so. The screw who then turns on him. Yes, Patricia. Yes, absolutely. Interesting that Trent I agree. I think that's interesting too. Yes, Jan, I noted that as well. It's very stark, isn't it? Black and white contrasts. Yes, absolutely. Who's watching me? Yes, my brother Randy is my brother Jesse is watching me. Absolutely. He's all around me. I mean, my family are all around me. They're protecting me on a constant basis. So you better know that if you cross me, because you've got my whole family coming down on you. Right. Just putting out that little friendly warning. Right. I want to come on to the last point. Just to say, though, did everybody notice the big Trump following at the Unite the Kingdom march on Saturday? And there was a lot of people there. I'd say there was at least 100,000, a lot of people. And the counter march, the kind of anti-fascist counter march, just a fraction of it. And can I just say, there's 2 children taken at both marches. Videos are floating around on social media. And I'm absolutely appalled that people are sharing it and comparing these children, because there's one child who's at the kind of Unite the Kingdom march and she's clearly very well behaved and she's peaceful. And there's another child who's at the anti-fascist, but, the fascist march. And this child is talking about, Nazis and everything and swearing. This child can't be any more than 7 or 8. Please stop sharing stuff about these children. These children are not responsible, any of those children or those marches are being taken by adults. And even if they're swearing and calling other people Nazis or whatever, that has been force-fed into them by their parent or carer. And I hate seeing children used on social media. Like, which child would you prefer? Like, none of them. They're children, right? Like, please don't do that to children. I don't like it. Don't like it at all. It really upsets me using children that way. What were the Israeli flags at Tommy's march about, says Gwyneth. Good question, Gwyneth. Absolutely good question. We know what it's about, and that is the support of Zionism, right? Support of Zionism. What's that? The women who are going missing in the UK all seem to show signs of distress before. Blackmail, says Rachel. Maz is already sick of American politics. Please get their stupid election over with. They are not our friends. Well, blimey, we're just heading into the most intense period. It's going to get mad. Yes, Kennedy. That's absolutely true. And that is what appeals to people. A key thing with Trump, whether you like him or not, is it's his way of speaking. He speaks in a natural way, not a schooled method, speaking politic talk. It's key. Yes. Mel's is feeling positive. I've had a dose of Godders in the morning to set me up for a positive, happy day. We love to hear that. Yes, EDL and JDL are linked. Yes, we need the keys, says Frank. 1 hour to go. No, Hugh. Hugh is hilarious. Hugh comes in every show about 11 o'clock to extend the show. Love you, Hugh. But no, it's not going to happen. Kenneth is heading for 11:11. Let's see. And by the way, have you seen all the celebrity endorsements for Kamala? It's extraordinary, right? Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Willie Nelson, Matt Damon, Jennifer Aniston, Robert De Niro, Jennifer Lawrence, Anne Hathaway, Spike Lee. You'd have thought Spike Lee would know better, but no. Andy Cohen, Bill Gates, of course. Neil Young, Whoopi Goldberg, George Clooney, Barbara Streisand, Rosie O'Donnell. Oh, that is a list of people that I would not want to be stuck in a lift with. Excuse me, got hiccups. Coming to the last point, because of course this week is All Hallows Eve, Halloween, Samhain. It's a number of things that many people celebrate, but it's also often known as the time when there is the thinning of the veil. Can you feel it? It's said by many that All Hallows Eve is one of the nights when the veil between the worlds is thin. And whether you believe in such things or not, it is highly likely that those spirits believe in you, right? Whether you believe in it or not. And this is not, a pagan idea. This actually comes from Christianity, the whole idea of the thinning of the veil. Now, I come from a background where the veil is thin all the time, right? I do not have to wait for the calendar to catch up, right? On Halloween, saying hello should be hello. I like that. Yeah, Lat, I agree. That celeb list sounds like the ones who wanted the safe and effective forced on us. I agree with you. Hope doesn't like Halloween, whereas Stephen loves it. And November the 1st, Day of the Dead, says Ian. And that is exactly what it is about, right? The idea is that on November the 1st, that is the time when the veils between our worlds, separating this world from the next, become increasingly thin and enable us to be able to kind of link up with our loved ones. Now, I operate on a level where I know that my loved ones are with me 24/7. Sometimes they got their own things to do, right? But when I need them, they are there and I can feel their presence. Feel their presence right now. I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. So I don't necessarily need that. But some people, some people really do believe that. In fact, many cultures believe that on that certain day, in Mexico, in Ireland, in England, believe that the veil between the worlds and this is especially thin and enables us to have a glimpse of another world. And as I say, I don't necessarily believe that. I believe it's possible to get glimpses beyond the veil at any time if you are in tune. Okay. Now, the thing is that this time of the year is perfect for all of these things. I love the bedding down, right? I love the bedding down for winter and the roaring open fire and the leaves falling from the trees. Very beautiful. I think autumn, it's very symbolic. Obviously, it's, the harvest. It's all the things that we've put in for this year, and then we reap the harvest of it, for good or bad. And I think that is symbolic. I don't just think that is just about the harvesting of food. I think that is the harvesting of intentions as well. Now, my intention is always to kind of have one foot in this world and one foot in the other. That's, again, how I've been raised. It's not for everybody, but that is how I've been raised. My mum was a medium, and I've often said that I'm in this world, but not of it. And I do appreciate this time of the year. And I also understand that lots of people are deeply concerned by some of the imagery that takes place on Halloween and how many people believe it's satanic. I remember my daughter's grandmother coming to see us when my daughter and I were carving pumpkins, and she would not have anything to do with it. And she's a proper Christian. She walks the talk, right? But she would not have anything to do with it. She was like, no, this is like evil. This is not okay. We should be really, really careful. And I respect that as well. I respect that. If you're around satanic folk, if you're around Celts, it's happy, says Crazy Bunny. Bible bandits. It's been hijacked by the Pornhub. What's that? I always remember the first Halloween movie, says Stephen. Jasmine, thanks awfully. I'm ready to go. What the heck? I never celebrate it whatsoever. I also think that Halloween's kind of odd because we spend the whole year telling children not to take sweets from strangers, and then we send them up their path to beg for sweets for strangers. Although you won't be surprised to hear not my daughter ever did that. We did have Halloween parties for her and her friends, and it was just kind of a nice affair. But there's absolutely no way I would have let her gone out trick or treating. It's not where we were coming from at all. Okay. But I want to talk about that thin place, right? Because I think that in order to be able to access something that is kind of outer worldly, you need to prepare yourself for it. And one of the things that you should, I hate to use that word, but this is what you want to do, this is what I do. Find yourself a quiet place, right? Get out in nature if possible. I mean, like the autumn leaves, all the natural elements that are around us, right? It creates more space for your higher consciousness also when you're out there. And again, enables you to tune into other things that are not so worldly, because we're stuck being worldly all the time. And I don't always think it's a good place to be. Okay. I think that a lot more can be resolved when we're able to access our higher selves. And I don't believe that our higher selves is part of this necessarily, is part of the lived experience as such. I believe our higher self is very much part of another realm. You could disagree with everything I say, and that's absolutely fine. This is just where I'm coming from and about this week and kind of like the celebration of it. And also, people talk about thin places, and this is really just used to describe locations where the veil is said to be particularly thin. And again, this is when you've got quiet space. Imagine get a quiet space outdoors, right, under a tree, and what you get is absolute more clarity in your senses. You're able to breathe. You're able to see. You're not enclosed by walls. Okay. And you also, what often happens after you've spent some time out in nature, gaining clarity, is your dreams become more vivid. And often people report that their dreams become more vivid around this period of time as well. Now, that could also be not necessarily because spirits are watching the calendar and saying, oh, yeah, it's November the 1st, but because you become more highly attuned, because you have told yourself that this week is special, that you can access beyond the veil. And then you immediately become more highly attuned because you're acknowledging that it's possible, right? It can, all of these things are not just woo-woo. It can literally apply in practical reality, okay? It can also mean, by the way, if the veil is getting thinner for you, it can also mean that the obstructions that you've been facing are getting weaker and thinner, right? So if you've been dealing with a lot in the last year, this in itself could be a period, full year, where things are maturing. You are having realizations yourself about what it all means. And in kind of like religious, spiritual terms, the veil is mentioned in the New Testament, along with the temple veil, by the way. It's a concept of a spiritual veil, which is about blindness or not believing. And it is a hindrance to truth. I'm in no doubt about that at all. Okay. And traditionally in Christianity, the veil is often, how they cover women's heads with the veil. And it's like how men are instructed to remove their hats when praying, for example. And wearing a veil, also known as a head covering, is seen as a sign of humility before God. That's why many people do it. And I think over the last few years, especially since 2020, the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world has absolutely been thinning, because our sense of awareness about what is going on is coming from a higher place, because where we are on earth, it's all about subterfuge, deceit, corruption. There's a lot of that going on, distraction, 11/11. And 11/11 isn't a distraction, although it could be, but that is what it is now. But a lot of it is about distraction. But what has happened over the last 4 years is things have become increasingly transparent. We are now seeing who are the corrupt, who are the wrong uns. We're seeing it, even if they sell it to us. Oh, this person is so good. She's been supporting charities all her life, but now she wants to get you into assisted dying. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like these gatekeeper type people who have been sold to us over a long period of time. Bit by bit, we're seeing who they really are. Yes, that's Esther Ranson who I'm talking about right there. Yes, 12/11 here, says the Blue Nomad. Yes. Oh, Randy, that's a beautiful thing. If you want to meet God, do it head on. Absolutely. I've never gone through anybody to get to my creator. And C19 opened our eyes, says Stephen. Yep. Kennedy went to a medium show last week out of curiosity, because I'm a big believer that we are all souls temporarily in a human shell. Unfortunately, I left feeling very disappointed, seeing total tosh. Some of it can be. I mean, we've had people on here and I'm like, what are you talking about? What? Oh, yeah, Markson. But also many are heading to the truth, Sonia. The frequency is rising and we have to keep it rising, right? Rise up. That very thing that I was told not to do on TNT, which incidentally is relaunching this week. But I'm told that they've been ringing around everybody saying, can you work for free in order to relaunch? By the by. But yeah, I was told not to talk about rising. And around here, we want to rise up. That is exactly what we want to do. So that's kind of like the ups and downs of what's going on this week. And also, if you visualize a veil, it's like a curtain, right? Remember, Wizard of Oz, very famously, they had the wizard's voice behind a curtain. That, I think, was symbolic of what is behind the veil, right, on the Wizard of Oz as one example. Okay, and the thing about a veil, obviously, is it blocks your physical sight of something, yet the light can still pass through it. Okay, and I think that again is very interesting. So that's the week we're heading into right now, whether you like it or not. And I personally love it. As I say, I love bedding down, getting ready for winter, and stocking up our wood by the fire, and it all feels really, really good. Let me read some comments from you before I leave. You will know the truth. Love it, Vanessa. Love it. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, free as a bird. Hallelujah to that, sister. Yes. Cathedrals and churches, I think, were to lift your vibrations with the bells, not to be told we are sinners. Absolutely, darling. Yes. The truth will set you free. There's no getting around it, right? So you're welcome, Martina. You're absolutely welcome. Love to Melbourne. Love to Melbourne. All the characters. What's this? All the characters of the Wizard of Oz represent the negative human qualities. Yeah, Wizard of Oz was very, very odd. Son waiting patiently on my shoulder. Says Crazy Bunny. C19 exposed the wheat from the chaff. It certainly did. And I love you guys joining me. We inherently know truth if we learn to listen to our hearts. What a beautiful statement to leave on this morning. I just want to say thank you so much all for being here today. Thank you to my beautiful, wonderful, knowledgeable, brilliant mods who I back to the hilt, should there be any question about it. And I am very grateful to them being here. And I'm very grateful to you being here. And thank you to everybody who contributes and donates to this show in whatever way is possible. I absolutely appreciate it. And I want to leave on a quote, because that's what we do around here. And that is, our beloved ones have not gone to a far country. It is only the veil of sense that separates them from us. And even that veil grows thin when our thoughts reach out to them. How lovely is that? That was Helen Keller. She was blind. Sometimes people without that vision have the greatest vision. I want to wish you a wonderful week, however you celebrate it. Take excellent care of yourself. Thank you for being here this morning with me, and I will see you again on Friday. Love you lots. Take care of yourself.